Sorry, I was on mute. Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope you are doing well. Before I introduce our speakers, as you know, we have a great session in relation to Azure Arc today. And before I introduce them and hand over to them, I just want to share with you the slides, the typical registration slide where you have the QR code and also the link where you can use and register to this session, confirm your attendance to Microsoft, and also access relevant materials to this in relation to this session and this topic. One important detail, as you know, we have been delivering free vouchers for free Microsoft certifications to help you get certified on Microsoft for free, but also we would like to ask your support. So we definitely need you to do this step of the confirmation of the registration so we can definitely then give you the Microsoft voucher. Without further ado, I will introduce our speakers. Hello, Wim. Hello, Carol.
Hi, Hugh. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm now unmuted also.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone.
No, see, the story is simple. I just had to mute everyone because anytime you play a video, if you don't mute, even if the people are on the backstage not showing up, the sound is still doing. That's why I got, and yeah, never mind. How are you doing, guys? All good?
Good. All good, yeah.
All ready for our session?
We're all ready.
So we have some people already joining us and also commenting.
Hopefully,
I see,
they hear us.
Yes. Well done. So, yeah, as I said, just take a minute. Let's take a minute. Just register to the session. It's It's pretty quick. You just need to submit your email and register to the session. You have access to relevant materials. You support us, and we support you as well with free vouchers, free Microsoft vouchers. On my time when I was doing certifications, I didn't have this kind of facilities. So enjoy, really. Okay,
you always needed to pay for those still.
Yes, definitely. In the beginning, when I started to do my certifications, I spent huge money on doing certifications, to be honest.
Did your company pay for those?
No, because at that moment I was working as contractor, so you pay by yourself. But yeah, you pay everything. But that's fine, can't complain. Okay, so given that, I think it's time enough. I will post to everyone the message and the link in the chat. You can use the link if you want to register to the session, and let's hand over to our speakers. So, Wim, I'm going to activate your screen if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and I will share my slide deck first of all. So I think my portal is showing at the moment. So let me quickly share my screen. So I think everything is fine now.
Yes, just to confirm quickly with you guys, do you prefer use the model of questions and answers at the end of the presentation, or do you want to interrupt during the presentation for questions and answers?
We do both most of the time. If you see something in the chat, we can answer. The other one is looking at the chat and the other one is speaking. So we can do at the end, we can do it in between. It's the same for us.
Okay, whatever you guys feel more comfortable. So given that, I'll be on backstage if you guys need anything, and have a great session, okay?
Okay, thank you, Hugo.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone once again. Thanks for joining and welcome to our session titled The Insider's Guide to Azure Arc. We think with the title and the topic, the theme will be rather clear. And we hope that at the end of this session, everyone who is not yet using Arc will start trying it out or start using it in its own environments. Before we start, we want to thank Hugo and all the others involved with Cloud Lunch and Learn for setting up this event and for us allowing this, delivering this talk. So what are we talking about today? So on the agenda, first, we will give you an overview of the current hybrid cloud solutions and how you can adopt them, and in the ways you can use Azure Arc in your environment. We will also look into Azure Arc enabled infrastructure and services a little bit deeper then, And of course, we also show some demos. Otherwise, that's the most interesting part of the session most of the time. And before closing off, we also look into the pricing because, yeah, at the end of the month, somebody still needs to pay the Azure bill. And I think, yeah, like you already said, at the end, we probably will still have some time for a Q&A. We would love to answer any of your questions. Before we start, let us also shortly introduce ourselves. So for the people who don't know me, my name is Wima Thijssen, and just like Carl, I live in Belgium, where I work as an Azure Technical Advisor. I'm also a Microsoft Certified Trainer and awarded as a Microsoft Azure MVP, which was and still is a huge honor. Community-wise, I'm a founding board member of a Belgium user group called MC2MC. It's a user group where we mainly focus on Azure and Microsoft 365. But we also keep an eye on security, Hyper-V, and almost a complete Windows Server landscape, especially with the release of Windows Server 2022 these days. Next to that, I also have my own blog, https://wemathijssen.com. And yeah, like most IT professionals these days, I think I'm also on Twitter. So if you ever want to reach out, just say hi. Or yeah, if you have a question around Arc, you can always contact me through my Twitter handle at Wemathijssen or LinkedIn, or yeah, you can even simply scan the QR code at the bottom of this slide. So Carl, with that, you can announce yourself, I think. Yeah?
Thanks, Wim. So my name is Karel de Winter. I'm a cloud solution architect working at Dexmag. I'm also from Belgium, where I'm a member of another user group. That's a Tech9 user group. We're more focusing on IT Pro, but also Azure stuff. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer and also an Azure MVP. And if you want to reach out to me, the best way is do it via Twitter, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or read my blog also if you will. So as you may know or not, Wim and myself, we have a background as system and infrastructure engineers. And that was mainly deploying and configuring network switches, firewalls, servers, storage, and so on. And what some of you maybe remember is the moment when you step into a large data center where you hear the sound of the cooling fans and also you see those blinking LEDs. Those were good days, Wim?
So like on the slide, it's a long time ago, but sometimes missing those days because you could do everything yourself. But
yeah, true. And that's what we see also today. A lot of companies still have those on-premises data centers. And I think on the next slide, Wim, you will tell a little bit more about that.
So just like Carl said, what we see these days is that customers often have 10 or hundreds and even thousands of applications running in their IT environments. These applications run in a diverse infrastructure. They can be running in their own data centers, in hosting environments, and even in branch offices, for example. And some companies even already, the most modern one, run applications in multi-cloud scenarios where they use 2 or more clouds like Azure, for example, AWS, or even Google Cloud. And to add to this complexity, their IT or cloud administrators use all different development tools, languages, and frameworks, as well as technologies like DevOps, Kubernetes, and AI. And so when a company comes into a situation like you can see on the slide where they have more than 100 applications running, and this in a diverse infrastructure, or like I already said before, in a multi-cloud scenario, and where their environment, requirements, and application landscape is evolving and growing almost each day, they mostly have a lot of questions and a lot of things they struggle with. For example, they struggle with how they can view, govern, and secure all their IT resources and in a seamless way, regardless of their workloads or applications are running in one cloud or in the other or in the data center. Another question a lot of those companies struggle with is how they can bring cloud innovation to their existing infrastructure and how they can modernize their local data centers with this new cloud infrastructure, like AI, for example, or edge computing. and how they can unlock new business scenarios with those things. So there's still a lot of questions. How do we need to manage all of those things?
Yeah, so if we now look at the benefits of Azure Arc, we can say that it will help customers to not only organize but also govern their servers that run on premises or on other clouds also, or at the edge in the same way. So they want to govern it in the same way as they do in their Azure environment. And it will also provide those customers with those cloud capabilities in their edge and more complex environments. And it will save them absolutely the time and also the money when they migrate workloads to the cloud. So, for example, as a managed service provider, they can also manage those services in their customer environments that are hybrid or in a multi-cloud environment. So the common benefits that we see are typically the data sovereignty. So you want to know where your data is, and most of the companies don't want to store the data in another country, or the data need to be in a data center. So that's why that you can keep the data on-prem, and then you can leverage the management capabilities of the hybrid cloud. The low latency is also one very important aspect. If you are a manufacturing customer that has manufacturing line that needs to has its data as close to that line, then low latency is very important. The modernization of your applications, the modernization of your data center is also very important, that we see that a lot of customers are trying to do, but not all of them can move all the workloads to the cloud. So that's why that the hybrid scenario can leverage all the benefits of the cloud and put it back in a data center. We see a lot of Azure Site Recovery being used at our customers, so that they can move their on-premises VMs into a DR scenario that they don't need to pay a completely new data center for. They just use the cloud for that, and they work in a hybrid scenario. And last, you have the freedom to go any public cloud, so not only Azure. So there you have the possibility to avoid vendor lock-in at that moment. And we see that mostly of the time, I think 90% of the enterprises still depend on hybrid. So hybrid will stay. Hybrid is nothing that is going away. Most of the companies have, most big enterprises have still on-premises hardware. They need to manage that. And we see the other thing that we see is that enterprises have a multi-cloud strategy. So they don't always want to use Microsoft Azure as the only cloud platform. They want to leverage other benefits and other cloud platforms, and that's why it's important to see that the momentum to hybrid and the multi-cloud strategy is it's still going strong, and hybrid is definitely going to stay. So the next thing is that what we say most of the time is that Azure Arc, that's what we are going to talk about tonight. So Azure Arc is the gap between your on-premises environment and the cloud, and that can be Microsoft Azure, but that can also be another cloud, like the Google Cloud, the Amazon, the AWS cloud. But the good thing is that Microsoft built something, and they are very straightforward in that they built the Azure Arc service to make a gap between those two worlds. So in that case, the things that we wanted to show to you in this session are very important to just have that hybrid scenario in place with Azure Arc.
So like you then can see on this slide, Azure admins or other administrators connect to Azure using different tools these days. So you can use the Azure Portal, you can use CLI or Azure PowerShell. For everyone, there is something they can use to connect to their environment. And what happens behind the scenes is that all those tools and experiences are interacting with Azure Control Plane, which is essentially Azure Resource Manager or ARM. You should know that every single resource in Azure is connected to this control plane, and the thing Azure Arc does is that it extends this control plane to resources outside of Azure, which involves deploying an agent on the servers or Kubernetes clusters, for example, so that those resources can be projected to the Azure Resource Manager. And once this initial connectivity is done, Azure admins can see and manage all those resources also from inside Azure. So it doesn't matter if they're running on-prem, in another cloud, the look and feel of the way you want to manage your resources is completely the same if they're running in Azure, on-prem, or in any other clouds. So if you then look a little bit deeper, you can split up Azure Arc into Azure-enabled infrastructure, which enables you to connect to your resources, which also live outside of Azure, and which allows you to work with them as they were Azure native resources using the same management tools and services that Azure provides. So you can use the Azure Portal, you can use Azure PowerShell, whatever you want. And the other one is Azure Arc enabled services, which allows you to have the flexibility to deploy fully managed Azure services anywhere, which can, once again, be on premises or even any other public cloud. So in this way, you can take advantage of Azure cloud benefits from almost any location you want. So like just said, Azure Arc is extending the Azure control plane to your existing infrastructure. But the thing we did not yet mention is what kind of infrastructure service you can enable with Azure Arc. Well, these days, with the general availability, or like you say, of Azure Arc enabled servers, Microsoft supports Windows servers and a wide range of Linux operating systems like SUSE or Red Hat. And with Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, which these days is also you're able to take advantage of Azure security services next to governance and inventory benefits for all your SQL databases. And then you also have these days Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, which is once again also where you can use cloud native tools, GitOps configured and app deployment, and this to better manage your Kubernetes clusters at scale.
Yeah, and if we, with Azure Arc, you have three benefits or three different scenarios that you can benefit of. So Arc helps you to accelerate the innovation across hybrid, but also, like I said, the multi-cloud environments. And it does that with a simplified management. So you can have a faster app development and that on all the Azure services that you know. So first of all, you can centrally manage all those resources in Azure, like you do already in your Azure environment. And those resources, like Wim said, that can be a Windows VM, Linux, SQL Server, or even a Kubernetes cluster. So you can govern, organize, and also do an inventory of those assets in the same way as you do in your Azure environment. So you have the tools that you use in your cloud environment to manage your on-premises environment. And this will help you to meet your governance, your compliancy that you need to meet for your company. If you have organizational standards, that's also used, then you can leverage that with the Azure Arc capabilities. For example, you can use Azure Policies for your apps, but also for your infrastructure and also for your data. And next to that, Azure Arc helps you to build cloud-native apps. So even if those apps are still on premises, you can leverage the capabilities of Azure. So for example, you can use DevOps techniques to deploy and also manage your Kubernetes apps. And you can do that at scale. So you can scale your underlying infrastructure on a Kubernetes cluster, and it can be any Kubernetes cluster that is CNCF certified. So that's a very broad spectrum for clusters. And then the third scenario, lastly, you can run Azure services such as the SQL Managed Instance and also the Azure PostgreSQL, the databases. You can run them everywhere. So not only in Azure you have the SQL Managed Instance, but you can take that and put that back in your on-premises environment So yeah, with Azure Arc, you can implement the cloud practices, like I said, and also do the automation, so you can deploy faster, you can deploy consistency, even in an AKS environment on Azure, or on a Kubernetes cluster that is on premises. You can do the same things spread over different things. And also with the Arc-enabled data services, you can leverage Azure SQL, but also put a SQL Managed Instance in your own data center. If your data needs to be in your own company property, then that's a good solution. And next is first of all, we need to adopt a successful hybrid strategy, and for that, as you see here, so the step 0 is migrate to Azure, and then step 1, 2, and 3 are all enabled when you use Azure Arc. And we will show you those capabilities today, even in demos. But I just want to mention very shortly that you can modernize your data center, for example, your data center hardware, if you use Azure Stack HCI. So I know that, I don't know if Lisa is here, but I think Lisa is the person that is mostly involved with Azure Stack HCI. So that's why we talk a little bit about Azure Stack HCI right now, because it sits also in the hybrid scenario. There are lots of sessions going on about Azure Stack HCI. Today and tomorrow, it's the Azure Stack HCI days that a lot of fellow MVPs are organizing. But with Azure Stack HCI, you can leverage all those Azure Arc capabilities that are built in Azure Stack HCI. So if you deploy that OS on your on existing hardware, or you buy some of the Dell, Lenovo, Fujitsu hardware boxes from the OEM partner, then you know that all the Azure Arc capabilities are built in. So that's that's what I wanted to tell here, that you need to have a hybrid strategy. So let me tell you, I think this is one for you, Wim.
Yeah, that's mine.
Okay.
So like Carl already explained, we want to look a little bit deeper also. So let us first look a little bit deeper into Azure Arc enabled servers. Like I already said, these days you can onboard a wide variety of servers to Azure with Azure Arc, like Windows, Linux, VMs, bare metals, or physical servers, which can be running on premises, at the edge, or in any other cloud environment. And with Arc enabled, you can then organize all these servers and apply governance, security, and for example, role-based access control on them. So something probably a lot of people want to know is which of those Azure management servers can be used in combination with Azure Arc. Well, first of all, you can use, like Carl already said, Azure Policy, but also Azure Monitor, or even Azure Resource Stack. With Azure Update Management, for example, you can keep your servers up to date with all the latest patches. You can also deploy Azure VM extensions, which will simplify the management of your hybrid machines. And for example, to uplift your security posture, you can use Azure Security Center, you can use Azure Defender, and even Azure Sentinel. You just turn it on, and you use them like you're familiar with using them. So a thing we also want to mention, and we think it's good to know, is that these days you can also use Azure Private Link to securely connect your networks to Azure Arc. Just keep in mind that it's currently in preview, and therefore you shouldn't use it in any of your production environments. So for people who don't know it, with Azure Private Link, you can securely link any Azure PaaS service to your virtual network using private endpoints. So you don't need to use a public IP address anymore for anything. It works with private IP addresses. And by combining this service or resource with Azure Arc, you can now connect to your Azure Arc enabled services, and every traffic they're giving over your express route or site-to-site VPN connection, instead of just using a public network or go to port 443 over the internet. to manage your on-prem services, for example. So from a security perspective, whenever this is out of preview, I think we would advise to, whenever you set up Azure Arc, to do it in combination with a private link. The thing you also should keep in mind is if you configure a VNet in advance and you specify the specific subnets. Mostly these days, we also implement a subnet specifically dedicated for Azure Private Link IP addresses, because a lot of resources, for example, like Azure Backup, can use up a lot of IP addresses, for example. So keep that one in mind whenever you're designing your environment or changing your VNets for this. Next to that, you also have Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. With Azure Arc enabled SQL Server, you can manage your SQL Server instances running on your Azure Arc enabled servers, and once again from Azure. And this requires no migration of your existing SQL servers. You can keep them where they're running, and you can use the tools available in Azure to manage them. And to enable this, you just register a running SQL Server instance with Azure Arc by using the Azure Portal and the registration script. And this script will install a SQL Arc extension to the connected machine agent, which is installed at first when you connect your Azure Arc enabled server. So in combination with this, you can start using all those tools. So like I already said, it supports then a set of solutions that require the Microsoft Monitor Agent or MMA server extension to be installed. And this one, of course, need to be connected to an Azure Log Analytics workspace for data collection and reporting. And one of the solutions available, for example, allows you to perform a SQL environment health check using the on-demand SQL assessment feature. But that's probably something, Carl, you can show somewhere, because I think you had this one running.
Yeah, no worries.
So, enough talking and enough said, I think. Let us start showing some things. So let me first close the slides. I think my Azure Portal is showing at the moment, Carl.
Yes.
So in my environment, let me quickly open this one. I have a Hyper-V running. It's running downstairs in my garage. I have a nice little server rack over there and have some little servers in there. So I'm running some VMs on-prem. So I have a domain controller. I have some app servers. I even have a router for the gateway. I have a management server, a SQL server, and a web server. Of course, I can use all my on-prem tools to manage those. I can use PowerShell, command line, whatever I want to use, I can use it. But I also want to use all my Azure tools, and I want to manage some of those VMs like I'm used to managing my Azure VMs. So let me go to my Azure portal. It should be showing. Whenever I want to enable a specific server, is it Windows or Linux, to be available in Azure Arc, I just go to the global search bar, you just type in Arc, it's quite easy. If you do it through the global search bar, it's also nice. The documentation is also listed over here, so if you need to look something up, you don't need to open other tabs in your browser to look things up. You can, these days, directly do it from inside the Azure portal, so that's a little tip we also want to give, but let me show you Azure Arc. So, if you open it, the Azure Arc blade will open, and in my demo, I will show you how you can connect servers to your environment. So we just go to infrastructure, click on servers, and like you can see, I already have two servers onboarded with Azure Arc. If I go back to my environment, let me see if I can show it. Yeah, that's too short. I have my VM EMEA App 01 and my VM EMEA Web 01. So if I connect to my Web 01, it should be this one. So let me quickly type in username and password. I hope I will type it correctly. And otherwise, Carl should sing a song or something. This is a normal Windows server. You can see it's even a Windows Server 2022. If I go to my, let me show this one. You can see I have already installed the Azure Connected Machine Agent. The Microsoft Monitoring Agent is also already installed, and I've installed my dependency agent. And when you install this by running a script, I will demo it with the clean server. And if you run that script, yeah, you need to log on, you need to connect, it will be connected. And whenever it's connected, you can open it in Azure. It will pop up under your Azure Arc server. So if I click on this one, you can see I can use tags just like I used to with my other resources in Azure. I can tag my city. You can see my data centers in West Europe. The server type, I have a specific tag called with a value Arc. And like you said before, we're both from Belgium. So yeah, country of origin is Belgium for this service. What other things I can do with this? You can add extra tags, just like you used to with other. You can go into security. If you install the the Microsoft Monitoring Agent and the dependency agent, it will also, Azure Security Center will give you all recommendations that it see that needs to be applied and following Microsoft best practices. So just like you're used to with Security Center, you can also open it in the Security Center. All those recommendations for those specific servers will pop up. You can see Azure Defender for server is on, and at the moment I have no security alerts. The next thing is the extensions. So I can see I've installed the Microsoft Monitoring Agent, I have the dependency agent, but yeah, if I want to add another extension, I can, for example, the custom script extension or the one used for SQL Server, you simply can do it from over here, and it will be deployed on the server. You can use specific policies. So Azure Policy is enabled. So the security policy used by Azure Security Center is enabled. So whenever something is not compliant with how it should be, this will pop up over here. A nice thing is Azure Update Management. So I enabled Azure Automation in my environment. I have my automation account, and I have update management. I have a specific schedule in place, which already updates my Azure VMs. But because this server is also enabled with Azure Arc, with the Microsoft Monitoring Agent, and I can use the Azure Automation, and I can also add them to the update management. So for the moment, he's missing two specific Microsoft Defender antivirus definitions, for example, and I can deploy it and put them in the schedule. Another thing is you can do the change tracking in inventory. So if I click on inventory, it will take a few moments, I think. You can see all those things are installed today. Surprise, surprise. So at 9:50 a.m. this morning, all those the Microsoft Monitoring Agent was installed, Azure Connected Machine Agent. If I now deploy new software, it will pop up in the inventory whenever Log Analytics gets the data. You can use change tracking, for example. So if it's opening, yeah, it always takes a few seconds. So let us wait for this one. So you can follow up just like you used to in your own environment. It will pick it all up and show you all those things. A nice things, the automation, we have the tasks these days. In the back, this is working by using logic apps. So if you click on the task, probably for this, you don't have the task available to start and stop or deallocate it. But for example, you can create a specific one to see what this resource, this on-prem resource will cost you, because Azure Arc is enabled at the end of the month. So you can create a specific logic app that will send you, for example, an email with a specific price and cost of this resource through your email. So quite familiar, just like you used to managing your Windows VMs, let us say, your virtual machines in Azure. If you click on one of those, you can see most of those things, some of those things are available. You have the insights, you have the change tracking, the inventory, you have those specific tasks, and you have the policy. For example, if you want to start using Azure Policy to manage your Azure Arc servers, you just go to Policy. Oh, a little typo. We just open it up to show you that there already are a lot of built-in policies available. If you go to definition and under the search, you just type in Arc, let me open this up. I hope it's big enough, Carl. Can you read it okay?
I can read it, yeah, it's good.
So for example, if you want to have the log analytics agent directly installed on any Azure Arc enabled server, you can, for example, enable this specific built-in policy, and this will allows you whenever that specific server and the connection management agent is installed and is initiated in the Arc environment, the log analytics agent will automatically be deployed, and all those other tools and services will be available, for example. But let me also show me how you can enable a server to be onboarded. So if I go back to my servers, for example, I just click on add. You click on add a single server, just click on the generate script button, click on it. You can see the private link scope. It's added over here with the preview. If you want to read about it, just click on that specific link and it will open in another tab. So I fill in my resource details. So I have my production environment. I have a specific resource group for Azure Arc. I just type it in. Region is West Europe. The server I'm running is Windows. Connectivity method, at the moment, I'm not using a private endpoint, so I need to use SSL on port 443, so I need a public endpoint. I can even add some tags, data center, West Europe, city, I'm from Antwerp, so there it is. I can fill in my country, Belgium, and also can add some custom tags like I had, let me see which one it was, the server type.
Your data center should be garage.
Yeah, I should change the name probably. So, and a server type, for example, to make it look different than my Azure VMs, I can add the Arc, for example. And then I just click on next, download and run the script. I can simply download it, or I can copy it, for example. Let me go to a specific server. Let me close this one. So I have another server ready. Let me quickly log on to this one. Oh, no, don't shut down. Let me type in my super secret password again. Okay, there it is. I already opened PowerShell if it's okay. So the thing I do, I just paste. Oh, didn't I copy it? Let me see. It's not copying. Why it's not copying? It's not pasting. So let me quickly download the script. Can I do it like this? Wait a moment. Let me do it like this. I hope my connection doesn't drop. I'm still there, Carl.
Copy it from the Hyper-V console?
No, it's not doing it for some specific reason. No, it's not connecting. How can I do it? Let me close this one again. We connect it. Nope, it's not pasting. So the thing you need to do is, we will say it like it is. You just run the script, then you need to log on. You need to go to a specific website. It's mentioned when the script is run. Maybe I can do it on the other server once again. If I do it on this one, let me try. Maybe this one is copying. Nope, it's not copying anymore for some strange reason. And if I download it, open file, let me show it, and I can get to it from so. So the thing it does, where it is, no, it's not opening. No, it's not there. Okay, there it is. No, it's not showing, Carl, for some specific strange reason. So this is the script. You download the package, it starts a process. It will connect to your machine. It has my subscription ID, my location, and you can use it from over here. So you copy it. That's quite strange. And then you run it. You probably need to identify through your phone with your authenticator app, and then it will be configured and the server will be added to your environment. I will, while Carl is doing the next thing, I will try to add this specific server to the environment, and I can show it afterwards, maybe, if that's good. So Carl, I think we can go back to the slides and back over to you.
If Hugo wants to share my screen, that should be all right. So I will talk about the Kubernetes App Management. So Kubernetes, what we see, it's growing immensely, and not only because it's open source, so the community around it, but also because we see a wide adoption of containerized applications also. And like I said in the beginning, it's Kubernetes together with that Azure Arc integration that is it's a key differentiator for Microsoft in comparing to other clouds. So you can, if you have an application, you can ensure portability. If you need to be able to move or have different environments that need to be consistent, then you can use that containerized environment like the Kubernetes environment is. And with Arc in general, with Arc enabled services in general, you have the flexibility at the Kubernetes level. So any distro, any CNCF certified Kubernetes distro is good to go. You don't have to be using only Microsoft Kubernetes environments like the AKS, but you can use a lot. And this is where, Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes comes into play. So that's a service that you can project your Kubernetes clusters to Azure. So in the same way as Wim showing that you can manage the VMs, you can also manage and organize your clusters in Azure. And you can. It's a big benefit because then you can leverage all those capabilities, all those management capabilities you can do from one management plane to, for example, an AKS cluster, but also Kubernetes cluster that is on premises. And what also is very good that you can use a GitOps approach. So GitOps is a Kubernetes operating model. So the configuration itself is declared and stored in Git, in a Git repo, and it's the Arc agents that are running on the cluster and then continuously monitoring a Git repo for updates and also if their changes are happening, and then automatically pulls those changes, pulls those configuration, and put them on the cluster. So you have one common approach to deploy applications, to deploy configurations, and it's a safe deployment practice because it's the agents and it's the GitOps methods that declare the desired state of your application and is the desired state of your configuration, and that is put by the organization or the application team that is developing the applications. And if something changes on the cluster, then the desired state will see that and it will put the configuration back in place. So here we see a screenshot of the Kubernetes service on Azure, and you see that you have not only an AKS cluster, but also an on-prem cluster that is Arc enabled. So you see that you have an on-prem cluster that you can manage in your Azure environment. It will show up in the portal, and it can be used the same way as you do in your Azure environment. And this is something that I will show in a demo environment, but you will see that you have different possibilities to manage your Kubernetes cluster that is Arc enabled. You can have those configurations, like I said, in place. You can apply policies, and you can also apply RBAC if you will. So the Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, again, it's similar to what Wim said. So it's similar to Arc enabled servers. There is a lot of flexibility based on the specific needs that you have. So, like I said, a wide range of Kubernetes distros are supported, and you connect all those clusters to Azure, and you can start deploying and configuring your clusters using a GitOps-based workflow, GitOps-based model. And additionally, you can also operate and monitor the health of your clusters and the containers, the pods that are on the Kubernetes cluster. And another powerful capability is the integration with Azure Policy. so that you can ensure the compliancy state across different environments. And like I said, you can also have or leverage security center to have the cluster security baseline. That's also a policy that you can use, but you can define a cluster baseline, security baseline. You can apply that to your cluster, and in that way you have the compliancy across your different environments. So next up is the Azure Arc enabled data services. So next to the Arc enabled servers, you have the Arc enabled Kubernetes, and then you have the Arc enabled data services. Yeah, here it is. So with Azure Arc, you can now bring your Azure Data Services to any infrastructure, so across on-prem data center, but also the edge and also third-party clouds. And yeah, how it works also. It's based also on a Kubernetes environment, and that can be on the hardware of your choice. So you can use Azure Stack HCI, for example, and benefit the Kubernetes on that. So the AKS on HCI you can use to have the Azure Arc and the Azure enabled data services. So you have different workloads that you can use. First of all, you have the Azure SQL Managed Instance. That's not in preview anymore. It's the Azure database for PostgreSQL that is in preview. But the Azure Managed SQL Instance that you know in your Azure environment, now you can place that on your own on-premises environment. And that's, like they say, an evergreen SQL. So that means that it's fully automated. The deployment is controlled by the policy that you have. There will be, no end of support scenarios because it's always the latest version that you have. You get an Azure SQL database as you know them, and you have it on an hyperscale deployment option. You can deploy in seconds. It's elastic scale also, so you can bring the benefits of the cloud. So you can have a lot of workloads that is placed on one SQL managed instance. If you are using Kubernetes that is beneath your Azure SQL managed instance, then you know that it's containerized. You can dynamically scale up, scale down, or scale out, if you will, and that with no application downtime. So that's very, very big benefit here. And the last is the connecting to Azure will also gain that unified management. Like I said, you have the single view for your on-prem, but also your cloud consistency workloads. You have that single pane of glass, like we say. You can use the familiar tools like the Azure Portal, but also the Azure Data Studio, Azure CLI with an Azure Data extension on. All those things you can use in your own on-prem environment to create and also to leverage the Azure SQL Managed Instance. So now you have access to the SQL Managed Instance that you know on Azure, but in your on-premises environment. So that's in that way you can also use the option to have the modern cloud billing for better cost efficiency and also spread across the infrastructure. So like I said, any hardware, any Kubernetes that can run the Azure Arc enabled data services. So how does it work? So let's explore a little bit the capabilities that you have with Azure Arc enabled data services. So at the bottom layer, like I said, you can have an AKS, you can have AKS on Azure Stack HCI, you can have OpenShift. All the CNCF certified Kubernetes clusters can be used to host the Azure Arc enabled data services. It can be anything that you know, even the third-party cloud vendors like AWS or Google Cloud can be used also. And then on top of that, so you deploy the Kubernetes cluster on top of that. And then from the Azure Portal or from the Azure CLIs that you know, or from Azure Data Studio, you can use all those CLIs and APIs to talk with the underlying Kubernetes cluster. And then in that way, it will talk with the container registry, download the container images, and then deploy it on your Kubernetes cluster. So I will show it how it works in a demo, but in general, the first step is that it will deploy a control plane, and the control plane that can be deployed through Azure Data CLI, but also Azure Data Studio, and it communicates with the Kubernetes APIs to pull the container images, and then you have the Azure Data Controller, and that's a very important component because the data controller, that's a set of container images that are provisioned on Kubernetes and provide all the management services, such as the monitoring, such as the backup, HRDR capabilities. All those things are in the data controller. And the data controller then has a capability or an integration with Azure Arc via the Azure Arc extension, and that's all talking with the Kubernetes API. So in that way, you can have data that will flow as a resource inventory of that instance, but it can be from Azure deployed on an Azure SQL Managed Instance that's hosted on Azure, but also in your own data center. You can use ARM templates for that. Azure Monitor can monitor your on-prem SQL Managed Instance, but also your Azure environment. So very cool benefits for using that. And if you hesitate, which deployment model should I use or should I need? Well, then you can see that must it be hosted on Azure? Yes. What do I need then? Do I need to have full instance, more control? Go for the managed instance. Just a single DB, go for a single database. Do you need a shared pool? Then you can go for Elastic Pool. So this is the known, on the left side is the known Azure database solutions. Does it need to be outside of Azure? Yes. Then do you want to manage the SQL instance yourself? Then you can have the Azure Arc enabled SQL Managed Instance, and that can be on any Kubernetes cluster, on any infrastructure. So the different management capabilities, comparison deployment model here, and the default SQL Server as we know them has not that many features as the Azure Arc enabled databases or the PaaS databases that we know. Some of them have the compliance certifications not in place. The customer is responsible for that. Customer is in control fully for their own SQL servers, fully for the Arc enabled databases also. So that's a good comparison to what you get if you host your own SQL Managed Instance, for example, on your own Kubernetes cluster. One thing, a great shout out to the Azure Jumpstart team. If you don't know the Jumpstart, Azure Arc Jumpstart is the go-to if you want to play, if you want to try out Azure Arc capabilities. It has different scenarios for multiple environments, not only the Azure environment, but also GKA. You can deploy very simply an Azure Arc SQL Managed Instance, for example, to different cloud environments. If you use that, you can use Terraform, ARM templates. It's all there. They have a little bit of YouTube videos also. They have a lightning show that we were from Dexmark also on. We did a little customer story there. So it's a very nice project that has gained a lot of benefit that we use also a lot. One of the things is I'm using the Azure Arc box to demo the environment. And that's the next thing I wanted to show you. Like Wim, I also have a Hyper-V environment that is deployed via the Azure Arc box. But it's in an Azure VM. Sorry, Wim, it's not in my garage.
It's not a real one. And by the way, it's working now. I was using the Connect VM, and that's why it wasn't copying. So in the meantime, it's deployed, but it will show it after your demo. So go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, let me just see if I can share my portal. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show is the Kubernetes, so the Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. I have onboarded 2 clusters, so 2 on-premises clusters into my Azure environment. But if you want to host your own or add your own cluster, then you just, like Wim showed, you go to Azure Arc. Instead of servers, you go to Kubernetes clusters, and then you can add a cluster. You follow the wizard here, the steps. You choose your subscription resource group. You give it a name. like this. You choose a region, West Europe. Then you can have some tests in place like Wim showed. And then the same way as Wim tried to do in his VM and now it is run the script. So this needs to be Bash PowerShell, whatever you want. Just copy that over to your Kubernetes cluster, paste it. You will have the details in place. Very important is this command. So there is a connected Kubernetes command, so an extension. That's an extension that you need to install. And this command is responsible for connecting the Kubernetes cluster to your environment. So these commands you need to run in your Kubernetes cluster. And I've done that. I just let me check. Yeah, I'm on the right cluster here in the right context. So first of all, I want to show you that the Helm charts that are being used are installing the Azure Arc environment. So it's deployed. It installs the agent that is responsible for the whole communication with the Azure Arc, with the Kubernetes environment, and with your Azure environment. Like we see, if I search for that namespace, so the Azure Arc namespace, the deployments and the secrets, you will see that there has been a lot of deployments in place, some proxy agents, some cluster connect agents, and so on. So those are all responsible for communicating or for connecting the Kubernetes environment with your Azure environment. And if I show the same details for the Kubernetes environment, here you see you can also have the insights. The insights dashboard is very useful. If you want to see what is happening with your clusters, you can monitor the CPU utilization, the node memory utilization. You can go for the specific nodes in detail. You can go for the specific containers also in detail, if you will. And that you can all do via the Azure Portal. The GitOps approach, where I talked about. So I've I forked just a public demo from Azure in my own repository. So it's an Kubernetes demo. It's just a simple application. It has a simple configuration also for your cluster configuration. You see, it's all the known Kubernetes manifest file, YAML files that you know if you work with Kubernetes. And I have one application here, and in that way I have configured a configuration. So I have configured the cluster configuration, and I also have configured an application. So that means if I change something in these files and I do a pull request, like the GitOps approach is, or the workflow is working, then that means that in the background, the agents will pick those changes up, and then they will deploy the changes to the cluster. So that's how the GitOps approach is working. And you see that we can also apply policies in here. Like Wim showed you, you can apply different policies, but also the security center capabilities you can leverage in that way. And if we have a look at the namespace itself, then normally, let me just copy and paste the command, if that works also. Otherwise, I should ask Wim
something with the copy button. Yeah.
Yeah, you see we have different namespaces. We have the Azure Arc that has the all the things in. You have Azure Monitor containers and so on. So that's basically very short demo of the Kubernetes capabilities. And then I just wanted to show you how you create a SQL Managed Instance. So from the marketplace, you go in the Azure Portal to the marketplace, you search for a SQL Managed Instance, and then you will see that you have different flavors. One of them is the Azure Arc SQL Managed Instance, and in that way, if you create them, you will also see that a very important component that you should know if you work with Azure Arc. Let me just give a name. Cloud Lunch and Learn. The custom location. So the custom location is very important to know. This is your on-prem data center. So custom location is an extension on your Kubernetes cluster that will allow the Azure Portal or the Azure APIs to be deployed to your on-prem environment. So in that way, you can fill in the details, and the custom location is also used by the data controller. Let me just quickly show you. So I've deployed the SQL Managed Instance already. The way you connect is via Azure Data Studio. Here you see that I have not only SQL Managed Instance, but also a hyperscale database. And you will see that the database here, you can migrate that to another, from a SQL Server to a SQL Managed Instance, if you will. You can just run very simple queries, and you will see that you always have the latest version. Yes, if I run that, you should see that there is a version number, and it's a SQL Managed Instance Azure Arc with a specific version number. One thing you get for free is Grafana. So Grafana, the tool, is also installed in a specific container, and it will show you a lot of details about your transactions or batch requests or anything that is database activity. You will see that in this Grafana view. I can show a lot more, Wim, but I think we should talk about pricing.
Yeah. So let me share my screen again.
Oh, I just will show the next slide. That's okay.
I wanted to show that the installation was okay.
Share your screen then. Okay.
So back in my garage, you can see on that specific VM, the script that's run. Some of the text is in Dutch, but yeah, that's because of my language I choose. So the script that's run has connected it. So if I now go to my Azure Portal, you can see that specific VM is there again. And in the meantime, I already installed a specific extension. So normally the Microsoft Monitoring Agent should be already installed. So it's already there. So just now, copy it in a good way and start using RDP and not directly from your Hyper-V host. Push the connect button, because otherwise the copy will not work. But let me share my screen, like Carl said, and let us close off with the pricing. So yeah, and before starting the Q&A, I think it's also good that we look into that, because yeah, like we said in the beginning, at the end of the month, someone still needs to pay the Azure bill. So what gets charged when you start using Arc? And first of all, when you start using Azure Arc enabled servers. So, well, any Azure management server that you can see on the list here on the right side of the slide of the screen, when attached to a server will be charged. The pricing model for these servers will be the same as they are today for any of your Azure VMs. For example, Azure Monitor for Azure Arc enabled VMs will be priced in the same way as it would be for Azure VMs. The only exceptions are Azure Policy guest configuration and Azure automation services, such as update management, desired state configuration, the change tracking like we showed you, and the inventory, which are free for Azure VMs, but are charged at around €5 for each server per month. For every Azure Arc enabled VM. You could use one of these or all of them together. It doesn't matter. The price will remain the same. So it will be around €5. So keep that one in mind. And then, of course, for Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, the price is based on the number of vCPUs per hour in the cluster, and is also charged on a monthly base. Just know that the first 6 vCPUs are for free, and that each vCPU after those 6 costs around $2, which is, if I'm correct, around €1.50 each month. For Azure Arc enabled data services, like Carl also showed you, which allow you to run Azure SQL or your PostgreSQL databases on premises or in any other multi-cloud. Like you can see, the price is around $153, which is around, if I'm correct, €130 almost for pay-as-you-go. but keep in mind that you can use it in combination with Azure Hybrid Use Benefit, which seemingly can lower the price. So with that being said, I think, we want to thank you for your attention. And I don't know, Carl, if there are any questions in the chat. I didn't see any. Hugo, maybe did you see or spot some that we missed?
I would say there are no questions. Then that sometimes is good because it means it's clear what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of good positive comments about what you guys are doing. And again, to all of you attending the session, and even if you watch later on, please, as I used to say, share some love, follow the speakers, understand that these guys, every time they want to deliver a session, they need to work outside of working hours, outside of work, to prepare the sessions, to help you learn about a given technology. So drop some messaging on social, acknowledge the work these guys are doing, and share some love, And talking about sharing love, before we wrap up this, I see Andrew is really active in the chat. Thank you, Andrew. One quick thing, I just reshared again the link so you can register to this session, confirm your participation in this session to Microsoft. And now comes the one of the good moments, I would say, of these sessions is I will share the link for the free voucher. So you can claim the free voucher. Please be aware that if you don't register to the session using the Microsoft link, you will not be able to claim your voucher, okay? So please do it. It's 1 minute job and you are done. And you have a voucher free that you save like $165, something like that. Yeah, something around that. So it's good, I would say. I will share in the chat to you. And I just have a fresh new for you in a minute. Let me just. Okay, quickly. Quickly to share with you. Let me just enable my screen. So I promise to be short. So if you didn't participate, if you were not aware about Ideathon, we did our first edition last year. Just to share quickly with you, we have great news. We are going to go with the second edition in November this year. And again, last year, for the ones that were not aware, we did, in collaboration with a PhD project in Ireland, we did a challenge to pretty much design a solution to help people with dementia. So this project is around implementing an application to help people overcome the challenge they have daily about the dementia disease. Okay, this year we have another great project, this time in collaboration with Baran and Baran students, and pretty much what they are looking for is to have a solution to improve the air quality, reduce the pollution, reduce the risks of people getting sick because of the pollution, and increase in general the quality of living in the society. So what I want to share with you is, again, I will share the link in the chat, and you can have a look. We have all the information there. We opened this week the registrations. We will start soon to massively promote on social. So you can bring your team with your friends, or you can participate individually, and we will line you up with a team, okay? And the most important thing is, remember, here you are learning with the sessions. Now it's time to apply your knowledge, show your expertise, share, and most importantly, create value to the society, okay? So we are not playing around creating cars and creating things and fancy websites. We are actually delivering value and helping the society with our knowledge and expertise. Well, given that, I have to say, thank you so much, guys. I know it was not really convenient these days for you guys because you have been delivering a lot of sessions recently, and we really appreciate. We are trying to close as much as possible the calendar, for the rest of the year, so we can focus on the Ideathon. So that's why it was a bit hard to just
No worries.
reschedule, your session. But once again, thank you so much for you. Thank you so much, everyone attending. Please register, get your free voucher, get certified in the cloud, and let's go all together. Okay?
Yes.
The limit
Thank
is
you,
the sky.
Hugo. Thank
Thank
you.
you
Have
so
a nice
much.
day.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.